the cult-like adherence to the liberal orthodoxy. More importantly, what is woke changes. For example, Womxn, W-O-M-X-N, was deemed at one point to be the appropriate spelling for woman because it's inclusive to women of color and trans women. Until a week later, when trans women said, we don't need a special word, just say woman and you're a bigot. And then it changed again. So you can argue that those are components of gay rights communism, I guess, but there's no logic defining when it is or is not.
The logic is that it's advancing towards the ultimate goal of absolute egalitarianism.
Except it changes every day.
But it changes every day because the various aggrieved client groups make their bids for what is and isn't excluding them. So there's a form of collective bargaining there, but the ultimate guiding North Star is absolute egalitarianism. And David Pakman might well be a grifter. However, I think if you sat him down and you asked him, if the Democrat Party could sufficiently redistribute enough welfare and free healthcare and human rights and housing to as many men from Mogadishu as possible, would they become American? He would say yes, which means that he does believe in the blank slate.
I think David Pakman would try to engage in sophistry where he would not take an absolutist stance and he would try and nudge you towards the liberal orthodoxy for the purpose of building audience and making money.
Okay.
That is, if you sit with David Pakman, he's the kind of guy who's going to be like, obviously that's an extreme and I don't think that's true for all people. I do think, however, some people can. That's the angle he's going to play.
Right. Okay. Well, then.
So this is the point. I mean, when you have liberals who are like, the military-industrial complex is bad and we've got to stop increasing the military budget. And then you go, I agree. Now say Ukraine. I go, no. Ukraine deserves more money. It's like, okay, there's no logic to what you're saying. You're literally just saying what MSNBC is adhering to. That is, liberal activists would argue the military-industrial complex is bad, and in the same breath say, Hassan Piker does this. And we're like, he's woke. Yet he simultaneously argues for and against the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, but...
And I will say this too. When the funding or defunding of the military-industrial complex is a component of the left, that's nothing to do with critical theory.
I think diluting the philosophical consistency of a position that can be ascribed to woke by also saying these people are sophists, these people are grifters, these people are stupid in the instance of Hassan Piker means that we're actually making the waters more murky in what we're trying to describe.
I think when you say woke is critical theory, or
not critical theory, it's gay race communism.
But that's just a pejorative for critical theory.
It's an instrument in enacting the final goal of total egalitarianism. But I think too much premium is placed on critical theory as the origin point of woke. I think it's John Locke, but there you go.
Critical theory is just the umbrella for critical gender and critical race theory. And you say gay race communism.
Yeah, but also I'd lump Rousseau into that.
You are excising out large portions of the influential liberal base that engage in political activism who don't ascribe to that, but ally with these people.
But I think they all do ascribe to it whether or not they've read it. Like their default assumption is...
It's not correct. It's just not correct. That's why Anna Kasparian breaks out. That's why David Pakman leaves the left. Because they never believed it. They were just adhering to the liberal orthodoxy. When Anna Kasparian lies about me personally for years, and then one day has an epiphany and changes her mind, she's woke. We say she's woke. She's lying about all these things. It is the cult-like adherence to the liberal orthodoxy, and the orthodoxy changes every day. It's impossible to actually follow what the rules are. So they're like the Womxn is just one example that I use where you say, okay, liberals, tell me what I should or should not say. And then the next day they pull the old tweet from a week ago and then cancel you for it. There's no logical consistency. What they're saying is or is not true. Now, I agree. Critical theory, gay race communism is a large component of what we've seen among the moralistic liberal orthodoxy. But certain components of it change whenever it's appropriate for them to gain power.
I mean, isn't it?
So real quick, when they say Republicans challenge the election and then every election they've challenged, when you've got a 40-minute video of Democrats saying Republicans have stolen the election, every single election, and then but Republicans are bad for stealing the election, you're like, there's no logical consistency what they claim.
I think that
it is just a cult.
I think there is.
One second. I think the feature that you're actually acknowledging, Tim, is that there's so much postmodern influence on the left, right? If you have a postmodernist who's making an argument, you're not going to get logical consistency because part of the postmodern, philosophy is that there are no actual overarching narratives that matter. So what you do is make arguments that are functional, so that way you can win the existing argument that you're in. You can make a different argument later, tomorrow, the next week, or whatever, because the actual underlying philosophy isn't important.
Agreed.
If you're going towards a goal.
And that is not unique to critical theory or gay race communism.
No, it's postmodern.
It's not unique to postmodernism. The idea that there's no truth but power, or the might makes right, is not uniquely postmodern. So when liberals,
it's not about it's not about might makes right. It's about what useful arguments will help you win the argument you're in, and that's not about.
And what the liberals are doing is saying truth doesn't matter. All that matters is I somehow steal power from you, and that has been true of the liberals and the Democratic Party for decades, irrespective of the rise of wokeness in the past 15 years.
That's the postmodern incident. That's the postmodern incident.
So when liberals have had this behavior and tendency pre-postmodernism, why would we then ascribe postmodernism as the principle of wokeness?
When are you talking about then?
I'm talking about the 2000s, when they were challenging the election.
Postmodernism didn't rise in.
The rise of critical theory specifically is the end of the 2000s, and we see this in the LexisNexis data. That was before they were already challenging elections while claiming they don't.
But that isn't when postmodernism came onto the scene. Postmodernism kind of came on in like the 50s and 60s.
Right. So the point is, if we're talking about wokeness as gay race communism, we'll clarify, gay race and postmodernism is a large principal component of what is the ideology held by these people. In 2008, LexisNexis data shows across the board in newspapers all around the world the rise of critical theory terminology, white supremacy, trans, etc. Pre this, and I'm sure everyone in the chat agrees, Democrats still behaved this way. If they cult-like adherence to their orthodoxy. A great example that I highlighted was the Prop 8 video from like 2011, where the Democrats were falsely ascribing views to the conservatives about gay marriage in California for the purpose of winning on that issue. This is before we were taken over by the before we were taken over by gay race communism or whatever. There was still, on the left, if you were on the right, you were bad. Right means bad. Right has always meant bad. And you must do what we say is acceptable or you will be excised.
So the reason I don't want to define it by tactics is to use a comparison. So political correctness came from the term paternost from Lenin in the early 20th century. And Solzhenitsyn in Gulag Archipelago describes how people's capacity for self-delusion, even in prison, would allow them to dob in their spouse as being insufficiently devoted to the Communist Party, or accept false charges so that their sons and daughters would join the Komsomol, the Young Communist League, even though they knew themselves were not guilty. So that capacity to lie, to delude, to adhere to a cult like orthodoxy comes long before the specific manifestation of woke as being gay race communism. So I wouldn't define it by its tactics, because those tactics are part of the
Nazis
tradition. No, that's what I'm saying.
Were the fascists woke?
No.
Agreed. And so when you have a totalitarian system, an authoritarian system, people bend the knee and will say, for those that know the reference, there are four lights. It's from Star Trek. It's actually a reference to something else that people have explained to me. But Picard was being tortured. There were four lights above him, and the torturer said, "Tell me there are five, or I'll electrocute you."
Yeah, it's from George Orwell's 1984.
Yeah, and so anybody will do that. When the liberals say, "Do it, or we will make you suffer," it is just a fascistic ethos held by the left, and that's why. Yeah, I'll put it this way: I guarantee you, David Pakman coming out and saying, I'm finally realizing this, it's because the money's drying up. He's on the wrong side of history, but I guarantee you, if tomorrow a progressive organization said, we're going to dump a bunch of sponsorship and ads into your channel, if you just apologize for that and say you were wrong, he would do it in 2 seconds. Most of these liberals would. Let me tell you, I've heard a lot of people critical of critical race theory and gender theory, which are bad, describe woke specifically as that. Yet, these people don't actually believe any of it. And I've proven it. And I think we'll prove it substantially to a greater degree, because when you offer them money, they drop the act immediately. So I'll give you an example, and I'll laugh about it when they post this in the Slap forums. Booney's HQ skate park, right? So we start filming content. We make skateboards. We sell skateboards. We've done like, I don't know, over $100,000 this year in boards. The last several months have been massive. The Don't Be Gay board sold, I think, $16,000 in a month for skateboards. And I was told by some of these guys in the industry that we may actually have one of the highest selling skate companies in the world now for boards because the industry is flat. Well, what happens is these woke activists go online and start saying, F Tim Pool, he's a fascist, blah, blah, blah. People start agreeing with them. And then you know what I did? I said, hey, do you want to come and skate at our park? I'll give you $1,000 to film videos. And what did they say? Yes. And what are they saying now? I never actually believed any of that. I just, so what we see here is power dynamics, irrespective of actual underlying ideologies. The people who go online and claim to believe this stuff, when offered cash, flip on like a light switch.
But I don't think the existence of grifters, and it's not.
It's all of them. It's
not all of them. There are many true believers.
The point I'm saying is that there are powerful people who have weaseled their way into HR and into industry who hold these views, and all of the people claiming that they hold that, they actually don't. And so wokeness, in the bigger picture, when we're looking at the mass majority, I'm talking about the people who know they're lying, the people who are standing in the crowd thinking, look, I've gotten more than enough messages from celebrities who are publicly woke who said, I actually don't agree with any of this, but I'll lose my job, I'll lose my sponsors, I'll get fired from my company. That's the majority of the people we call woke. They are just adhering to the cult out of fear. And you offer them cash and a guarantee, they drop it in 2 seconds.
I think that, I understand the point that you're making. Using woke as a broad term is functionally correct, but I also think that there are thought leaders on the left. There are people that are actually coming up with these ideas, and they're filtering through into those people. These people, like your average woke person, didn't come up with any of the ideas that they have on their own. They come from academia, usually. They come from
I get all that.
Philosophers.
My point is, people will say woke is specifically this ideology, and I'm like, 80% of the people who are marching with liberals don't believe any of this. The core issue is, in fact, just that they have the adherence to the murmuration. There is a swarm that is moving left, right, up, down, top, left. Makes no sense. Supporting fundamentalist Islam and LGBTQ causes makes literally no sense and adheres to no ideology. But it's because they're told they must. And so I would describe it as Barack Obama did, a Mexican standoff. So how is it that critical race theory adheres to Islam, which is a fundamentalist authoritarian system that does not comport with woke ideology or critical theory?
Because they believe that Islam has only been provoked by white settler colonialism into being violent.
I don't believe that's true. I think that's sophistry. I think that's an excuse. And the reality is you've got people pointing cancellation at each other. This is how Obama described it several years ago, that I'm concerned. I'm scared that you have a powerful political action committee in your space that people will bend to. That is, a vendor will cancel your contract if you insult Islam. That if you draw a picture of Muhammad on the cover of your magazine, Islamists will come and murder you. So what happens? People who fear this adhere to that restriction.
This is a totally real phenomenon. At the same time, pretty much everyone that is currently running the UK government and all of their paid foot soldiers are true believers because they're doing this at personal expense.
For sure. I'm not saying they aren't. Yeah. I'm just saying to define woke as critical theory ignores Islam. And so when you look at the bigger picture of these conflicted ideologies that don't go together, you're like, okay, so hold on. The expansion of the desire for Sharia law in some of these communities is completely in conflict with LGBTQ activism and the idea of the oppressed minority, especially considering Islam is like the second biggest religion in the world. So defining woke as critical theory, at the same time, the liberals in this country have large elements of support for Islam. It's not the ideology. It is the cult-like adherence to these power structures.
They think they're going to basically shed that third world barbarism if they just redistribute to them enough money, enough social housing.
And that's because they believe they're blank slates.
Because they believe they're blank slates.
Those woke people do. But I'm saying the majority of people that we describe as woke because of the things they do and they say, in their heart of hearts and in private, are actually saying, I don't want to be killed by an Islamist and I don't want to be killed by an Antifa guy.
Then I probably wouldn't apply the term woke. They're going along with woke incentives, but they're just cowards and grifters and conformists. I would define woke as a set philosophy. But
then, so the issue I take with this specifically and why I give it a more broad umbrella is that people like David Pakman would be defined as woke, despite not actually believing it and only adhering to it out of a fear of the power exerted by minority groups and their willingness to be extreme. So that's why I say it is simply the cult-like adherence to the liberal orthodoxy. That is, whatever the umbrella of liberalism determines you must do is what wokeness is. It is the cult-like adherence to it. And so for someone like me, who's a relatively liberal guy, who does not adhere to their orthodoxy and says, that's nuts and I won't agree with that, they call me right-wing. I am no longer a liberal. I am no longer on their side. They have excised me, despite actually being a traditional liberal.
Well, you never believed in the blank slate, so you're on a traditional liberal, Tim.
Traditional liberals, like in the 90s, didn't.
Yeah, they still tried to keep in tandem the freedom and equality principles, which is why it was mainly defined by sort of Bill and Hillary Clinton Democrats.
Yeah, so I would just, to move on, I would just describe it as there's a large phenomenon of prominent cult-like cancel-list liberals, people who will destroy your life. They will send the hounds of war, the hounds of hell at you when you speak out of turn. They will call you far right. They will call you every name in the book, and they will get you banned and do whatever they can. And they don't believe in blank slate, and they don't support Islam, and they don't support the trans stuff. But they're surrounded by people with pitchforks, and they're like, I don't care. I'm part of the group. That's all that matters. And I will just wrap it by saying, all of the celebrities, professional athletes, and people that I know personally who I have seen make public statements who privately have said, I'm just scared because I'll lose my job. When we look at what's happening right now with the trends in politics, and like I mentioned, Instagram and all that, that's why I think we've really won. Doesn't mean we've won permanently, at least this battle, we've defeated them, because regular people now are just outright being like, yeah, screw that. And people like David Pakman, who's whatever you want to call him, sophist, grifter, he's abandoning all of that. He never believed what the woke believe, and now that it's not profitable and their political power has waned, he's coming out and being like, yeah, they're bad. He knew they were bad 5 years ago, but he adhered to their orthodoxy in a cult-like fashion and attacked those who opposed him because he wanted to be in the liberal orthodoxy. That's it. To be a liberal is all that matters, and it doesn't matter what the liberals believe, be it supporting Islam, which is at odds with LGBTQ activism.
But I do think sometimes you do see people like this specifically on a track given like 6 months when they do come to the more like centrist moderate position, is they are still trying to just repackage the same woke ideas with a right-wing facade to pass a sniff test.
James Lindsay's a really great example of what's going on right now in the political space with our overwhelming victory, because James Lindsay is woke.
Yeah, he believes in the blank slate.
Right. And that's a component of it for sure. But the reason why I define James Lindsay as woke is because his willingness to use underhanded tactics and force to get to make others adhere to a liberal orthodoxy. The difference is James Lindsay doesn't like the critical theory that dominated the liberal orthodoxy. The reason why he rejected it and they challenged it, and they will explain this to you, and you can read everything that he and his cohorts have stated, is that it was detrimental to liberalism and what they wanted to happen. Now you can look at what James Lindsay is doing. Every tactic he is using in his woke right escapade is on par with the cult-like adherence to liberal orthodoxy.
Did you see
despite the fact that he's not a critical gender theorist or critical race theorist? He is blocking people, insulting them, saying, quote, "It's not my job to educate you." He's labeling anyone in any kind of right, different ideology is all woke right. He is accusing his enemies, that of which he is doing. He is doing everything the woke did in the 2010s. But I believe James Lindsay's motivation, and he's like, my understanding is like an open relationship, polyamorous, liberal guy. His motivation was critical theory is bad for the liberal orthodoxy and it must be stopped. But the liberal orthodoxy overpowered him and he lost control of that. Now that it's weakened, what is he doing? The same exact tactics they've always used against conservatives to assert a new supremacy among what the liberal orthodoxy must be. And so its strategy isn't working very well, mind you. But I believe the end goal of James Lindsay and what he's doing is he wants to reestablish a cult-like adherence to liberal orthodoxy under his view of what liberalism should be. That is polyamory, abortion, certain standard liberal traditional policies, exemplified by his willingness to insult literally everybody as woke right. He's using a term that he knows disaffected liberals have a distaste for, He's using it to target people who are not woke in any capacity. He's basically saying alt-right, as exactly what the woke did throughout the 2010s. I have created an umbrella term for everyone who is my enemy on the right. I will label all of them as such, even if they disagree with each other and aren't even right-wingers. That way I can poison the well and create an enemy list. It's Alinsky. It's 101. He is creating a new form of woke, and that's why I see James Lindsay is the perfect example of woke right. He is the right arm of the liberal cult-like adherence.
He thinks he's the new Bill Buckley, but it turns out he's just got schizophrenia. So basically, he's ended up on the right, and he's rearranging the furniture in his refugee camp to make himself feel more at home, when actually it turns out that if you just alienate people because you're fundamentally antisocial and insane. For example, he called all of the people that were doing the Hoist the Colours campaign in the UK, putting up the Union Jacks and the English flags, he compared them to the Confederates. He said this is a psyop to rehabilitate the Confederate flag. James, you know absolutely nothing about the politics in my country, you arrogant tard, and your brand of liberalism has come out entirely in the wash because it's been repudiated because you haven't reassessed your priors in how it was the handmaiden for the wokeness that you hate so much. And the only reason he hated it, which he put with Helen Pluckrose in Critical Theory, is because it would provoke the right-wing backlash. Because remember, the revolution is never the problem, it's only the counter-revolution that's the problem.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.